Welcome to another episode of Mining Now. On this episode, we are heading overseas to Finland. We're featuring Ari Saartenoja. He is the founder and CEO of Radai. He's here to break down their environmental measurement services using unmanned aerial vehicles and static ground stations. But before we get started, let's thank our sponsors. This episode is sponsored by CIM. CIM is the leading membership organization for technical content and creating connections in the mining industry. Mining professionals and students can access a breadth of technical expertise through the CIM Technical Paper Library, the OneMine Digital Repository, the CIM Journal, the CIM Magazine, and also attend upcoming CIM webinars. Whether you're working in the field, in the office, or at home, join the community today and learn how they can help you achieve your professional goals. Find out more at cim.org. We are also sponsored by Saartenoja Equipment. Saartenoja Equipment supplies new and used mining equipment around the world, from placer to underground to ore processing plants. They have gold concentrating tables, trommels, and mineral jigs in stock now to take advantage of the high gold prices. You can visit them at saartenojaequipment.com, where you will find more equipment every day. And last but not least, we have PowerZone Equipment. When you need a specialized team of world-class engineers for your oil and gas, pipelines, dewatering, or any fluid handling needs, you want to visit powerzone.com. In addition to their inventory of rebuilt pumps, motors, engines, they also have an amazing team to design and engineer your systems, no matter the challenge, no matter the location. Get in the zone with PowerZone. Visit them at powerzone.com. Let's get on with this episode of Mining Now.
Hello, welcome to Mining Now. I'm your host, Jared Downey. The show is brought to you by a partnership between CIM and Crownsman. We love the partnership. We love the show. Thank you for joining us. And today, as our guest, we have Ari Saartenoja. Ari, I'm going to get you to fix how I just said your last name, because I know that's not right.
That was correct. That was perfect.
I got it right.
Yeah.
Well, Ari, you're the founder and CEO of Radai, which is a geological survey company. Can you, before we get into some of the technology that you're using, but also the gear that you're using to transport your technology, which is great, tell us about the company, just give us that little snapshot of it, and then we'll dig in.
Okay. We established the company about 2013, and after 2 years we were developing it in our own garage, I would say like that. And then our key point in the company from the beginning has been that we wanted to invent something new, lightweight sensor for geophysical surveys. And the key point is to use drones, unmanned aerial vehicles. And that's the idea how to improve the current survey methods. And that has been our key idea of the company from the beginning. So that was the basic start from the company.
Okay, and sort of where have you got to now? What service are you providing at this moment?
Yeah, currently we are providing magnetic surveys. So we are measuring magnetic field, and first customers we got 2017 between 18, and now the revenue is growing little by little, more and more. And that's the one key product what we are currently selling or providing customers. And then we are developing also other geophysical survey methods.
Yeah, we're going to get into them. They're quite interesting. You've kind of got a goal that you talked about at the beginning. There's, I forget how many linear kilometers you've flown, but there's sort of a goal that you have to get to, which is essentially the circumference of the Earth. Can you talk a little bit about that target that you're quite rapidly approaching, actually?
Yeah, actually, when we started 2017-18, we were flying like few thousands of line kilometers, but then it has grown rapidly during 2019 and 20. So this year, I think we will fly total amount close to 40,000 line kilometers. I mean that on the whole company history. So maybe 2020 we will fly like 20,000 line kilometers. So it's growing all the time, the line kilometers.
I know that you've worked with a fair amount of Canadian companies, and I wanted to get into there's a couple interesting things that I mean I don't know about in Finland, but I know in Canada they've actually made national news at some point. Is about the permits for flying drones. So can you do a little bit of a setup, because you're allowed to fly drones at a much a longer distance from basically the eye of the eye of sight, or the wow, I'm saying that wrong. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, how we are doing the surveys, we are doing it in the beyond visual line of sight. It's a BVLOS operation, so we can't see the plane. So it means the plane is flying like 10 kilometers far away from us. And for that kind of flight operations, you need a special permission. And I have to say that we have been really lucky. When we started this business, we didn't realize that how liberal Finnish regulation is related to drones. But anyway, in Finland, it's quite easy to get this kind of BVLOS operation in rural areas where it's not high populated areas. And it means that we will get own airspace. It's a restricted airspace where our drones can be flying easily. And other nations has own regulations. That's one challenging part.
Yeah. So looping back to those Canadian companies that you've done work for, are you able to name a couple of those? I know there's a lot of NDA stuff in mining, so I'm always, I always want to check before I ask the questions. But what are some of the companies that you have worked with in Canadian companies?
Yeah, I can mention three most important. It's first, Quantum Minerals is one, Firefox Gold is one, and then B2 Gold. Those are the three major Canadian companies where we have been providing magnetic surveys during this year.
And are those operations in Finland with those Canadian companies? Is that right? Which is why you can do the operation that you do with the permitting that Finland has. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct. So we are doing mainly our operations in Finland. Of course, I'm really interested to expand our operations to other countries also. But anyway, we will start from Finland. That's the plan.
Yeah. Are you seeing other countries starting to move? Because this is a major challenge, because Canada is a very similar thing where they've got most of their population, our population is like within a couple hundred kilometers of the US border, like 90% or something like that. So most of our landscape is empty. And so if you're flying a drone over those, doing those surveys, you're not interacting with humans, or very, very minimal. Are you seeing more countries starting to move that direction where they are loosening the permitting?
I don't know, maybe not loosening, but at least in European area, they are unifying it so that every European country should have same kind of regulation and legislation for the Airbus, these unmanned aerial vehicles. And that's what the European aviation authorities are currently doing. And the legislation will give in action, I think, is it during this year or beginning of next year? But anyway, the idea is that if you, for example, get the drone certification in Finland, you should be able to use that certification and fly also in other countries. In Europe.
I see.
But what I can say about this beyond visual line of sight operation, I know that will be tough in those high populated areas. That will be tough in future, that for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, understandably so. Obviously, you don't want someone to be able to fly their drones all over. We're here in Vancouver, we wouldn't want that. But I was wondering, I wanted to clarify something. You're in the north of Finland, is that right?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's a lot lower population. Now, in higher densified areas, they must have fairly strict permitting as well, right?
Yes.
They've actually separated out the locations.
Yeah, that's true. And there are also these altitude restrictions that drones can fly too high. But in the Lapland, for example, in Finland, rural areas, there are no restrictions almost at all. Maybe some military bases and things like that you need to take care. And Of course, there is this wildlife, how do you say, the eagle nests. That's what you need to take care of, that kind of restrictions. But when you know from the certain time you can't go to some area because there is eagle nests, that's okay. If you know how to handle those things, it's not a big deal. But I believe same issues appear in the Canada also, that there are also wildlife restrictions in some areas.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure there is. I'm trying to understand though, there's a couple things. Again, when you now deal with part of, the European Union and all that sort of thing, now you're also getting into like data sharing things. And I want to get into your technology and your units and I wanted to cover all that as well. But I just wanted to sort of get clarification on that, because if you're going, let's say you've got permitting across, it's sort of a unified across the European Union, that doesn't necessarily mean you can go across borders with this, and there's data sharing issues and all that sort of stuff. Sort of being in the business, how do you sort of see that playing out over the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I can say that when we started operation in Finland, we didn't even know that how restricted some parts of this business are. For example, in Finland, the military forces will give you, or you can't make these measurements without military forces giving the permission. And in Finland,
Okay.
it's not restricted to share the data. But for example, what I know, for example, Russia, it's the government or the state of the Russian government owns the geophysical data. So you can't transport that data to outside of the Russian borders. And I have to say that I don't know the legislation from other countries. How about in Germany or France or Spain? What kind of data sharing regulations they have?
It will for your company, though. Once it's unified under the European Union at first, it will, because then I just realized as I was about to ask a question, what it means is a Canadian company, like you've worked with a few Canadian companies now operating in Finland. Now those same Canadian companies operating in other countries are able to access the same technology that you're offering because it's under one. That's right, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's possible. And for the Canadian companies, when they operate in Finland, it's pretty easy. Of course, we process the data and we will give them. So actually the data itself is not delivered outside. They will get the results here in Finland.
Because it's operating in Finland.
Yeah.
I want to jump into some of the products. So you kind of switch into the geophysical, but then you're also a flight company. Let's start with I want to get a drone company on our show. Pretty much the first episode. We were trying so hard when we first launched at CIM. We tried to get drone companies on and we couldn't get them on. So you're here. So I've got to ask you just about the units, the flying units that you've got. Let's start with that, and then we'll get into the geophysical side of it.
Yeah, that's really good question, because when we started this company, I thought that the flight operation and geophysics is the same. But nowadays, I don't think that anymore. And even furthermore, I'm planning to separate this company so that the flight operations should be separated from this current company. The flight operations are totally different task. And then the geophysical survey is other task. And in the geophysical, I mean the instrument and the data processing. So if you think about the survey method, the drone is just a, how do you say, bus or taxi. It's just driving there and carrying the equipment. That's how I see it. So, for example, our field team, it's not a professional in the geophysics or geology, but they are really professional in the flight aviation. They know how to handle the drones. And furthermore, nowadays I see the risk assessment and the quality control for flight aviation even more and more important. And that's why my plan is to separate two different companies. Other one is doing the flight operations and other one is doing the geophysical survey sensors and data processing.
So do you, obviously you're rigging these out for the geophysical surveys, but have you, how have you got the distance and everything like that? Have you customized the units themselves, the drones themselves?
Yes, currently in the beginning we built our drones on our own, and even now we are flying the drones which we have customized and built our own. And the
Oh.
sensors what we are developing, they have to be so lightweight, so that we
Hmm.
should have been able to, we have been building them on our own. Okay, I can say that the magnetometer, the sensor itself has been bought, but all the rest, the data locker and all the other sensors we have customized.
I see. So how many units do you currently have in your, I guess it would be called a fleet?
Yeah, okay, we have something like 8 planes. When we go to the field, we use 2 planes simultaneously. 2 planes are flying at the same time, and then we have 2 or 3 spare planes. So if something happens to the planes, then we can just take the spare plane and continue the survey.
Right. How many people to fly those two simultaneously, just to fly? Let's say they weren't doing all the geological side of it. Those operators, how many people does it take to fly two? How much can you cover in a day? Does weather, all that sort of stuff? How do you sort of map out how much you're going to be able to map in a
Yeah,
day?
yeah. Currently we have 2 people in the field. So we have a flight operator who is flying the plane or launching and landing it, and then the other people is monitoring the flight all the time. And the well, we will. It depends on the weather and sunlight, but our record is a little bit more than 1,000 kilometer in one day. But that means
In
a really long day. But I would say that something like 400, 500 kilometers in one day, it's possible to do. And uh, if I think about our surveys for Canadian companies, they have been like a little bit more than 5,000 line kilometers. So it means that we must be able to fly quite a lot in one day.
And yeah, so those long days are, yeah, those are sort of your summer months and those sort of things where you can work
Yes.
those. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then just I want to move on to the magnetic survey systems that you have in just a moment. In the winter with these, because these are electric powered units, how long are they going to be when it drops to maybe not even like extreme conditions, but just into the cooler months? Do you lose a lot of distance with that?
Yes, some distance, but I would say that the lack of sunlight is maybe the most
Mm.
problematic. Of course, the temperature is one issue and certainly is, but it's also possible to heat the cabin, the batteries, so you can
Oh,
handle that problem. But it doesn't matter, the flights are a little bit shorter. In summer times, we are flying like 1.5 or 2 hours per one flight. But in the
okay.
winter time, maybe 1 hour or a little bit less. And
I
of
see.
course, it depends on the terrain. If it's very hilly, okay, in Finland we don't have that kind of areas, but anyway, there are some hills also in Finland, so that shortens the flight time also.
There, I think I saw in the picture you sent, there was one of maybe it was in Greenland. It was
Yeah,
flying through a mountain. It was quite the shot.
yeah. That was really nice trip. We made one quite large survey in Greenland 2 years ago, 2018 summer, and that was really nice. And I like
It's
that shot also. That was huge experience for us, how to transport all the equipments and how to make one survey in other country.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing stuff. Okay, Ari, let's get into let's get into the sort of the nuts and bolts of the technology, because obviously that's a service that you're providing. So it's I think you're using a magnetic survey system. I am so far from a geologist or understanding it that I'm obviously going to rely on you to walk me through it. But you're primarily using the magnetic survey system. Can you talk about it? There's a list that you have, but you I think off air we wanted to discuss a few, and there's one called the Radai's 3-component magnetic survey system. So let's start with that. shirts, what it is, and then let's dig into it a little bit.
Yeah, this usually magnetic field has been measured as a scalar measurement. Just like you would say that some point you are measuring just like a temperature, one magnetic value for the one point. But actually magnetic field is a vector field. It's pointing somewhere. And our sensor is able to detect the direction also of the magnetic field. We are using flux gate magnetic sensor. I don't know why people are not using that survey method a lot. Maybe one reason is that it's quite tricky, because if the plane is moving, it's rotating, you need to measure also the rotation really accurately. And at the same time, you are measuring the magnetic field, and then you need to compensate the result. But anyway, that's the system and process what we have been developing. We have been able to measure quite accurately 3-component magnetic vector, and then by using the inversion method, by processing the data, we will get more accurate result of the bedrock and soil magnetic material.
So that method that you're using, though, is that now that's something that was in the industry before. So have you refined it? Have you done something specifically? Again, these are tough questions for me to ask, because I don't have as good of understanding of the system. I was trying to read through it and understand it, but obviously you're an expert in it. How much of what you're doing was already in place, and then you just attach that to that approach to your units, to your drones, or have you fine-tuned the system that you're using?
Yeah, I think we have not developed any new equipments. These flux gate were developed, I think, was it even World War II? So they are pretty old technology. Of course, the sensors itself has been improved, but I think our innovation has been that we are now applying using this latest flux gate technology, also latest IMU orientation unit technology, and then UIVs, drones together. And that's maybe the, if you can say, the key innovation. And of course, you need to develop also the software for processing this data, what you now get from these sensors. So I would say that there's nothing innovation in the sensor itself, but applying together these sensors. That's the innovation.
Yeah, no, that's a good clarification. I actually just had someone on the show, and they were talking about a lot of times when people hear innovation, they're thinking of a sort of a whole new way of doing it, as opposed to refining and fine-tuning a tried and tested way. And that's really what you've done, right?
Yeah, that's true.
There's another electromagnetic, the future that you sort of have off camera you've talked about. Can you talk a little bit about where you see you as a company going, and where the technology is going, and how do you utilize the technology?
Yeah, that's interesting system. I think that kind of system does not exist in the market so much. At least some prototypes and some companies are doing trying to make that kind of systems in the market. The idea is in the electromagnetic system is that you should be able to measure the conductivity of the soil, of the bedrock. That's pretty normal in geophysics, but using a drone for that, it's challenging. So we need to have a transmitter which is sending the electromagnetic signal, and then we need to have a receiver to receive the signal. And then the bedrock and the soil change the signal a little bit, really little bit, and then we should be able to detect that small change. And then we can find out the conductivity of the bedrock and soil. And we have been developing this since 2016. And 2017, we got nice funding from European Union, and using that funding, we have been able to develop it much further. It's not a commercial product, it's a prototype still, but we have got really good results, and we will hope that after 1 year, maybe we should be able to make first pilot tests here in Finland.
I'm going to jump forward, and then, or I'm going to jump back to the beginning of something I referenced, and then I want to jump back into the funding that you got, because I think that's an important thing. Funding is such a especially on the exploration side. Of course, funding is a major part of this business. So I want to talk about the European funding the European Union funding that you got, because I think it's so important to understand these different funding streams. But I want to go first, because we just talked about your technology. I want to talk, is there any of these projects, you mentioned a couple, you mentioned Firefox Gold, Quantum, and B2 Gold are the three that you've done. Is there any one of those that you'd like to kind of highlight as part of your technology? And then I want to get into some of that funding for the electromagnetic.
Yeah, at least the latest one was the first quantum mineral survey last summer, a little bit after that. And that was really interesting survey. We measured a little bit more than 5,000 kilometers in Finland, Lapland. And actually the area is so big that we used two teams same time. So we have a two flight team. One flight team was in the field using the two drones simultaneously, and then the team came back, and then the other team continued the survey. And that's how we were able to do the job in decent time. And the customer was really helpful also. There was a geologist in the team, not every day, but every week visiting there and assisting us. So that's why the product and the survey was so successful.
How much, you've already mentioned it, but how much of a difference does it make when you've got that customer sort of right there with you? Because there's we've had some people on the show, you can tell they sort of want the company to not be involved in what they're like. They just kind of want to do it and provide the report. But it sounds like in your case, you're sort of wanting that. You appreciated having that geologist there sort of along the way to continuously update.
Yeah, that's okay. I can say that those other surveys, the customer was not visiting in the field, and that was not a problem. We made it different way that after we got the survey result, we immediately send it to the customer and they check the data, and that was also possible. But but it's not mandatory to visit in the field for the customer, but it's nice, I would say so.
Jumping back, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of those because we just kind of talked about your product. So I wanted to sort of get an example. Funding, I kind of outlined the importance of it already, but let's talk about, I think it's called Horizon 2020 Next or something, new exploration technologies. Can you talk about what that funding stream is? It's very interesting because it's got this collaboration of it's the European Union, and then it's multiple companies. So obviously companies from different countries. It's quite interesting. Could you just kind of talk a little bit about it?
Yeah. Okay. I don't know so well about the Horizon 2020 globally, but it's a huge funding organizational institute for funding European areas, different business brands, and mining is only one, but there is healthcare and ICT sector and all kind of things, and there are billions of euros for funding. But about this topic, what funding we got, that those are close to 10 million euros budget for that kind of funding what we got in the next project. And the aim of the project is to develop new sensitive exploration technologies, which is acceptable for nowadays societies. And there are 16 partners in that Horizon 2020 project. And this year, I would say again about the other Horizon project, it's Golden Eye. That's also close to 10 million euros funding for that project. And there's also 17 partners. So we have been really lucky to get two different this kind of huge funding projects for us. Our funding total amount is close to 1.5 million, and that helps a lot us to develop these systems for geophysical surveys.
What is the process for that? I mean, those are large amounts of funds that are available, of course, but what is that process? Is it companies that are developing ways that are more environmentally friendly? what sort of the criteria to get a funding to get funding? Do you have to be a country within the European Union? Like just those sort of standard things you have to be.
Yeah, yes. At least mainly you need to be in the European Union. I know that there are some restrictions. For example, Canadian companies, I think they can also join, but they can't get funding. But anyway, they can join the consortium. But it's a huge competition for these projects. So I would say that less than 5% are successful if you make a proposal. Because the funding, for example, in the next project, it is a 100% funding. And in that other project, Golden Eye, it is 70% funding. So the funding rate is really good. But it's a long process to make the proposal. It means that all the partners, they have to prepare the proposal several months or maybe almost 1 year. We make the proposal for the next. We visited 2 times in Brussels together and see all the partners, and we use plenty of effort and force, the power to make the proposal. But we were lucky to get it granted. So usually they don't get granted, but we were lucky.
Yeah, whenever someone says they're lucky, and a few people have said it on the show, I don't see I always know there's an extra level that they had. What was that? I'm sure you're humble and everything, but it's important for for the audience to understand as well. What gave you that edge that you could get that funding? Was it presentation? Was it the scope that you would, that stream that you would be able to deliver that was in demand? What do you think sort of stood you apart?
Well, I would say that the whole consortium has to have a good proposal. I mean that our company role, it's only really small part. But anyway, in the proposal, there has to be some innovative, something new, because the evaluators, they have plenty of different proposal and they are going through the proposal and they give certain points of different tasks, the innovation and technical readiness level and things like that. But I don't know what is edge. Our company has been bringing in these 2 Horizon projects, we have been explaining and describing these drone-based electromagnetic surveys, different levels. And that's maybe has been interesting also for the evaluators, I guess so.
I want to kind of understand too, as far as we get to the back end of this interview, where Radai fits in, and by that I mean, there's someone that needs 100 kilometers or something surveyed. I'm sure they're not getting you to pack up all your gear and bring all your crew out. So where is that sweet spot for you as a company?
Well, I would say that where we are aiming, or what is our goal as a company, how I see, and or I would say in the first that about the challenges is that the leveraging, how we can scale up the business is one challenge for us. Because if we get for example, survey case in other country, it's really difficult to transfer all the equipments. So most of all, in the future, I would like to see the drone companies to be more interested about this kind of operations. And for example, let's assume that in Canada there are plenty of drone companies which can fly really effectively. So I would be really interested to make cooperation with those people to provide this kind of survey method, this kind of sensor and data processing, and they would be able to do the survey in their home nation.
That's an interesting point. So you really want to attach there because there's other companies. I mean, of course, like you go to a trade show or something like that back when we had live trade shows. When you go to that, you would see, I mean, there was a ton of drone companies. So you really do want to collaborate with some of those companies if there's an opportunity for that. That's sort of your scalability then.
Absolutely, yeah, that's the idea. And now my idea is to establish own drone company here in Finland, and I would like to clone or copy that idea when we learn in that flight operation company what kind of company should cooperate with Radai. And currently, for example, we are training one team in Africa, in Nigeria. It's going to be a long process, but we will test our systems so that how we could train local people in other country to use our drones.
Right. Now, for you, Ari, this is I when did you sort of decide I'm going to pursue this? I mean, you got funding later on, but you had to start that. I think you have a partner. I mean, how did you sort of get to the point where you were going to uh, go out on your own and sort of tackle this type of company? It's never easy to start a company, so I'm always curious of what sort of motivated someone to do it and what sort of their vision is that keeps them going.
So you mean how we invented, or what was the basic idea? How it was me and my friend when we found this idea. So that actually we were not even planning to establish the company. We were just interested to test how this kind of magnetic survey would work. And little by little, it went more serious. We have one mining site here near our hometown. We visited there with our drones and we started to test our magnetic system. And little by little, we saw that, hey, this is possible to do. In the early phase, we just thought that we put the magnetometer in the drone and that's like that. It's take only few months. But then after 3 years, we realized that it's not so easy. So it's always surprising when we start really doing something as a business, then it becomes more difficult.
Was it difficult because you wanted to get it absolutely right? Like, could you have put it forward into a year earlier or 2 years earlier, and you just felt like it wasn't quite ready, or was there just challenges that you just didn't foresee, and it completely had to be reworked, your approach?
Yeah, we didn't see all the challenges. We thought that we know what is magnetic field, how to measure it. We thought that we know how to fly drones, but then there started to come surprises after surprises. Even the magnetic field, it's so simple maybe, but it's not so simple to measure also the magnetic field. And the drones, when we started 2013, 2012, I bought my first drone. I didn't know anything about drones. It was just in the market, there came first drones, maybe a little bit earlier than that. And it was just a childish idea that, hey, let's try that kind of multicopter and let's attach there some sensor. So even now I'm thinking that how we even succeeded, because we didn't have any knowledge.
Is it more now that you've sort of got it, or is it easier to see sort of a vision, or is it sort of a case by case, get more customers, or do you have a pretty clear vision of where you want the company to move forward to?
Do you mean in the future, how we want to go
in the future
now? Yeah. Anyway, now we already have customers and we know how to improve, and there's plenty of things what we can improve in the new sensors. And about the drones itself, I'm somehow interested to improve the effectiveness, so that why don't we use 3 drones or 4 drones or 5 drones simultaneously? Of course, I know that it's a legislation part also, that is it so that there has to be one pilot for each drone. But somehow I have a strong feeling that in future this kind of fleet drone swarms are coming into the action, and maybe the legislation will change it also, so that one person can monitor and control several drones. I think it has to be like that in future.
I think so. You've touched on an interesting point, I think, Ari, is that if you could operate your business within the parameters and the permitting and the regulations that you have now, when it does change, you'll be that much further ahead. Is that sort of your approach? So someone else they won't be where you are because you've been able to operate within these parameters.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. That if there comes, and there will come new regulation, of course, we are much more familiar than new competitors, if I would say so.
Yeah. So just to wrap up the interview, so for you, obviously a Canadian company wanting to do the surveys, that, I mean, you're in Finland. Yeah, I mean, you're you're the company to go to. Are you able to? Is it worth at this point having the conversation? If other companies or in other countries they need your services?
Yeah, currently I can see that we focus on Finland currently now, and next country where we are going to is to Sweden. But definitely for other countries we are fully interested. But there, I would say that we strongly would like to see a drone company as a partner for us, because how I see it's so difficult for us. For example, one case in Turkey, we were planning to go there, but maybe it was lucky that we didn't go there immediately, because there are plenty of regulations in every country and you need to know them thoroughly. But like in Turkey, in that case, there was really talented drone operator partner, and using that as a partner, it should be successful.
I see. No, it's very important, and it's something we actually hadn't really discussed off the camera. So I'm glad we got to discuss it a little bit on the show, because obviously that scalability and expanding and seeing that opportunity, and hopefully people that are watching with drone companies, will reach out to you as well.
Yeah. That's definitely so. I hope to meet drone companies which would be interested to make this kind of business, and when the process is working, sensors are good, this is profitable business. But you need to know plenty of aviation, the drones, the legislation, how to operate in the field in rough environment with the drones. And I believe many drone operators knows it, but maybe not all.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Ari, for coming on the show. We covered a lot of ground. The technology is like you said, it's this old technology that's being revamped in this modern world of drones and data collection and real-time data and all this sort of thing. So there's a lot of room left for it to go. Looking for partnerships. You're sort of at an interesting time. So I'm glad we got you on the show now, because I think it's sort of a, maybe in a couple of years or another year, have you back on and sort of look at that journey forward. It's going to be quite interesting to watch.
Yeah, definitely. I would be also interested to join your interview later, also after a few years, and it's going to be interesting for me also that see how the company is, where it is going, and because there's so much technology coming and there are plenty of challenges. So let's see what will happen in future.
Well, it seems from talking to you off camera and here, it seems like you've done a good job at developing it and securing, getting customers and working within your own borders, but then looking for ways to, opportunities to partnership. I think that's a good outlook for a company like yourself. And I want to say thank you for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. It's right now, I think it's almost midnight here that I'm doing the interview, and I think it's about 10 in the morning or something your time. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's 10 in the morning.
Yeah, so it's usually the reverse. Usually we're doing our show at 8:30 in the morning. So thanks for coming on, and I'm glad we could sort of work it out to do it.
Hey, thanks, George. It was a pleasure to discuss with you.
Thank you, Ari. Okay, that is the show, everyone. Like I said, this is actually, I mean, you'll just watch it online, but this is a late night show for us. So special thanks for Gary coming in the middle of the night, basically, to do the show. We appreciate it. Rory Bamford is the one who booked this show. So thank you for booking us this in, Rory. Thank you again, Ari, for coming on the show. Keep watching, everybody. Keep promoting mining. Keep looking for new technology, recommending guests to us. We love doing the show with you and supporting the mining industry. So thank you, and see you on the next episode of Mining Now.
Thank you for watching this episode of Mining Now. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Also, if you'd like to be a guest on the show or know someone that should be a guest on the show, please contact us, info@crownsman.com. Again, thank you so much to all of our sponsors, and thank you for watching. We will see you on the next episode.